if you miss anything, a recording will be sent out at the end. So anyway, thanks for joining SCORE Maine today in our presentation on the SBA's Woman-Owned Small Business Certification. We're joined by Bryan Wallace and Miranda Pelkey from the EMDC, who will give this presentation on this very important certification to get if you're a small business that's woman-owned. SCORE is a resource partner of the SBA, and we help clients throughout Maine and the country at any stage of the business cycle. And we also want to thank our sponsors, the EMDC, Maine APEX, and the Maine Technology Institute for making this event possible. Without further ado, Bryan and Miranda, why don't you take it away?
Yeah, thank you very much, Jasper. My name is Bryan Wallace. I'm the director of the Maine APEX program. It's a program out of Eastern Maine Development Corporation. And joining me is actually our deputy director, Miranda Pelkey.
All right, so today what we're going to be discussing is what is a WOSB and an EDWOSB certification. So WOSB and EDWOSB are two distinct certifications, and we're going to define those for you and explain a little bit about how the process differs. Who can be a WOSB? That comes up often because oftentimes people will say, well, any woman that owns a business is qualified to be a WOSB, and that's not always the case. So we're going to kind of go into the details of why that is, what you need to do to be ready, what the process looks like a little bit, and then we're going to talk a little bit about what we do here at Maine APEX and how we can help you out with that process.
And to kind of continue with that, the Maine APEX thing, just a background on who we are. I already talked about Eastern Maine Development Corporation. We're just one program of that. We do receive a little bit of funding through the state of Maine, through DECD, and we have some subrecipients like Northern Maine Development Commission, Sunrise County Economic Council, Four Directions Development Commission as well. And our program receives federal funds. It comes through the Department of Defense and the Office of the Secretary of Defense. But we're a part of a nationwide program. There's 98 APEX accelerators across the United States. You can imagine states like Texas and California have like 6 or 7 regional programs. We have just one program here in the state of Maine, and we'll talk more about how we break that up in a little bit. But basically, our clients are just businesses that want to do business with the federal government, state government, or local government. And today's webinar on women-owned small business certification is actually a really good example. So we try to assist clients with anything that will help them be more competitive with government contracting. And so this is not our certification, it's the SBA certification. We are not SBA, but we assist people obtain the certification. And all the services we offer are free. So if there's a referral that needs to be made, by all means, you don't have to hesitate to recommend us.
All right, so oftentimes we get asked, well, why is it that APEX assists with this? Is it really that complicated? And the truth is, it kind of is a little bit. So whenever you're dealing in anything when it comes to government contracting, you kind of fall into this alphabet soup of acronyms where you'll hear WOSB, EDWOSB, VOSB, STVOSB, and everyone's like, I don't know what any of these means. And most people who work in government contracting will just kind of spew those out like it's common knowledge. And so it can get really overwhelming for people to kind of sift through that. So we really help you to kind of decipher what are those acronyms, what do they mean, which agency actually handles those. For example, today is the SBA. And we can kind of help you to navigate who you need to contact if you do need to speak with someone at the agency. Government registration rules and government procurement rules. So especially on the federal side of government contracting, when you get into things like the Federal Acquisition Regulation, or the FAR, part of that alphabet soup, um, you kind of start to fall into multiple clauses and amendments and things like that. And it can get very, very complicated for anybody to be looking at. So we can kind of help you to sift through the legalese of all of that and explain what that means. And SBA updates. So the SBA comes up with updates and program changes all the time. And oftentimes that can be very confusing because it could mean that suddenly there's a change to who qualifies for WOSB or the process. And we're going to be getting into a little bit of why currently there's an issue with the SBA updates as well. Where we're going to talk a little bit about how there's a little bit of a pause right now when it comes to the application process, because the SBA does make changes often.
Yeah, definitely. Spoiler alert, there are some updates coming in on slide 10. One of the things we like to say is basically, larger companies have staff for this sort of things, and smaller companies can rely on us to kind of ground them a little bit and help provide a little explanation on things. So speaking of acronyms, I realized I think we already threw out WOSB and EDWOSB without really describing what those acronyms are. So within the SBA, there are two certifications. There's a woman-owned small business certification, and then there's an economically disadvantaged owned small business. That's the EDWOSB. And the way I like to think of it is the WOSB is the bigger circle, and within that circle, there's a smaller group of EDWOSBs. So all of those EDWOSBs, they are woman-owned small businesses. There's just an extra step, basically, to determine the economic disadvantage part. And to be either of these, your NAICS code, the industry that you're in, this NAICS code has to be on this list. And so there's a total of 733 different NAICS codes that the SBA has determined that women are underrepresented in. And about 620 of those are WOSB. And then that smaller red circle for the EDWOSB, there's about 110 that are specific just to that. And that, even just determining what your NAICS code is, can be a little bit of a rabbit hole. And that's something that Apex can help a business determine as well.
Yeah, that's actually, and it's funny because in talking about the acronyms, NAICS codes, that's often something that we'll throw out there and say, well, there's 733 NAICS codes, and then sometimes we forget that small business owners might not know what a NAICS code is. And so the federal government gives numerical codes to each industry, and it stands for North American Industry Classification System codes. And basically your NAICS code is what determines if your business is considered small by the federal government standards. So that's what we kind of mean when we talk about NAICS codes, and very oftentimes we encounter small business owners who are not familiar with NAICS codes and they don't know what their NAICS code is in particular, let alone if that NAICS code falls under the certification. So if that's you and you are somebody who's saying, I have never heard of NAICS codes, I don't know what mine is, that is not a big deal at all. We can definitely help you figure out what yours is and if it fits into the certification.
And that's usually the first step I would take with a client. If somebody said, hey, I think I'm interested in obtaining the woman-owned small business certification, the first thing I would say is, all right, let's find out what your primary NAICS code is, and let's make sure it's actually on the list for the SBA's underrepresented by women list here.
100%. All right, so here at Maine APEX, we assist with certifications. And the reason that we assist with certifications is because of Bryan had said earlier. So we help all of our clients when it comes to anything that's going to assist them in government procurement. So The SBA socioeconomic program support, there is a certain percentage of work that needs to be allocated to small businesses. And so you'll see here 23% of all contracts need to be awarded to small business owners. So 5% of that 23% needs to go to a WOSB. So the way that we typically see this is there can be something called a set-aside contract. When the federal government issues a solicitation for a contract of work that needs to be done, they have the ability to put it out as a set-aside contract. And what that means is, if it's a WOSB set-aside, in order to be eligible to even submit a bid on it, you have to have obtained the WOSB certification. So if you don't have that certification, you're out of the running automatically. So knowing that not only you are, yes, you're a small business owner, which we've already said, we can kind of determine that based on your NAICS code, but beyond that, you also fall into that, that category of a WOSB. That's going to make you have a much more competitive edge because it knocks down the competition. So while they're still getting bids from multiple people, the number of bids that they're receiving, just because many small business owners are not going to fall under WOSB status, that's going to be lessened, and therefore your chances go up. So a small disadvantaged business, that's 5%. Another 5% has to go to businesses that are considered disadvantaged. That includes the associated 8A programs. So for those of you who are familiar with that program, minority-owned businesses fall under that program, and other disadvantaged. Hub zone businesses are 3%. That's kind of what that goal is for the federal government, is if you are located in a hub zone, 3% of all that business needs to go to those businesses. SDVOSB, service disabled veteran-owned small business, 3% for them as well. And these are not firm requirements for the federal government. So these are goals. So oftentimes I've heard people use the word quota. They have quotas for what it is that they need to do. But the truth is, with a quota, when you don't meet your quota, there tends to be some sort of strict consequence that happens. But because the FAR recognizes that federal agencies can't really control how many small business owners are eligible to even bid on these things, they don't have a requirement to do this. So while they're trying their best to hit those numbers, it doesn't always happen. And oftentimes it doesn't happen because small business owners aren't aware of these certifications. So they haven't gone through the process. So there could be a contract that goes out, a solicitation, and they just simply don't have enough WOSBs to actually bid on the contract, and it might get pulled as a set aside. So it can get complicated. And also keep in mind, you do not just qualify for one of these if you fall into multiple. So if you're a veteran and you're a woman and you're located in a hub zone and you qualify for all three, you can 100% go through that process and collect all three of those certifications, which will make you a little bit of a unicorn for the federal agents. They like to see that because you check a lot of boxes. So it's definitely, while we're not going to go deep into these other certifications today, keep them in the back of your mind because we do assist with all of these.
And I usually try to point out too that for hub zone and the SDVOSB for service disabled veteran owned, even that 3% sounds like a really small number. But you have to remember the government contracting pie is huge. So even a small slice of it is an incredibly large number. And I'm not going to try to recall what the number was, but in 2020, for HubZone, the average size of awarded contract was $450,000. So that being the average, clearly there's some smaller things and there's some larger amounts in there, but $450,000 for a small business owner is a big deal. And so it is a really good opportunity. I put in this funny little thumbs up pointing towards HubZone and woman-owned small business, just because as a whole, over the last 5 years, the government's done a pretty good job of getting to these goals. But woman-owned and HubZone are the ones that I would say most of the federal agencies fall short on. And so I mean, you're welcome if you qualify. You're welcome to get certified in any of them. But a lot of the Apex counselors, if you are qualified for woman-owned small business, they'll say, "Hey, let's get you that certification."
Yeah, definitely. And there's also um there's while these are federal certifications, state and local governments, they do like to do business with WOSBs as well and hub zone businesses. So while they do not have those same goals that the federal government has, these certifications can certainly help you when it comes to state contracting as well, because a lot of times state funding is leveraged by federal tax dollars. So they like to have that in their reporting that they're working with those people as well. So sometimes I have clients that I work with who they don't really have a lot of desire to do business with the federal government. So they say, well, is it really even worth it for me to go through this? And I always tell them, you know what? It is, because it's another way that you can market your business. And I think a lot of people recognize this outside of the federal space as well. So I just wanted to throw that in there.
To add a little bit of mud onto the clarity, there are a lot of third-party certifications out there, and so I think to back up a little bit, I should say, if you want to put a sign on a business that you're a woman-owned business, or if you want to, just go to the Chamber of Commerce breakfast and say you're a woman-owned business, you do not need this certification. There are some that are industry specific, and as Miranda was saying, there's other reasons out there why this SBA certification might be good for you. But the SBA has basically signed off on these 4 third-party certifications and have said that basically to get certified with these organizations, it's either as restrictive or more than the SBA certification. So if you go through the U.S. Women's Chamber of Commerce and obtain their woman-owned small business certification, the SBA will kind of use that as a reciprocal, agreement, and it's not in lieu of the SBA certification. But when you go, you can use that as, see, I've already gone through this process with this group, and the SBA says, oh, great. And you still have to do a little bit of the application material, but it's a lot faster process, both in terms of getting the certification through SBA and through their review period, and you don't have to provide all that documentation again. One of the big benefits to it, I should say, probably the biggest benefit to it is time. If there is a timely reason why you need this certification, going through these third-party options is going to be faster than going through the SBA certification process. Now, the downside is, as far as I know, all 4 of these charge a fee. And most of them charge like an annual membership fee, just like a Chamber of Commerce might do. And then they charge an extra fee on top of that for the certification. So, and I keep using the Women's Chamber of Commerce as an example here, because it's the only one that I ever had real experience with a client who was kind of going back and forth, wasn't sure which one to proceed with. And she basically ended up I asked her, is joining the U.S. Women's Chamber of Commerce something you would do regardless of this certification? They offer a lot of good trainings. They offer different like expos and conferences and other opportunities for education. And she said, yeah, like I would like to join this group anyway. And I was like, great. Then I think we should probably, go down that road and consider it a little bit more, because if she wasn't interested in joining the U.S. Women's Chamber of Commerce for any other reason than the certification, I think I would have put the brakes on a little bit more. But just wanted to put this out there as it's a option. And there are a lot, like I said, these are just the 4 that the SBA has kind of signed off on and said, yeah, we will accept these. But there are other ones out there as well.
So benefits of WOSB and EDWOSB, as I kind of mentioned before, when it comes to prime contracts, there are set asides that are put out specifically to WOSB or EDWOSB, and that's going to significantly decrease the amount of competition that you're going to see coming up against your bid. More so even with EDWOSB, because the EDWOSB certification, far less businesses hold that one. And you'll see when we get into the process reason of why so many less people hold on to that EDWOSB certification. So, but there are set aside. So they are specifically for those types of contracts. There's also sole source contracts. If they don't feel that 2 or more qualified businesses are going to be able to submit offers, and they determine that the qualified business is responsible and the contract can be awarded at a fair price, they can offer you a sole source offer. So that's for prime contracts. However, some people don't have a desire to be a prime contractor with the federal government. They don't want the brevity of that contract. They like to be a little bit removed from them, or they just do a very small piece of that contract. And so they're fit into the subcontracting category. But prime contractors, often with subcontracting plans, try to meet those program goals as well, particularly if they're not a WOSB or a hub zone or a VOSB. They really kind of like to pad their proposal with their subcontracting plans and say, look, we don't have that certification. However, we're going to work with X, Y, and Z, and they happen to have that. So it does make you an asset for those prime contractor relationships as well. And it can really be something that gives you a little bit of a boost if you're trying to develop those relationships with prime contractors. You're having a hard time getting your foot in the door. That can be something that'll grab their attention. And they'll say, well, maybe we should be looking into this more because we can use this to our benefit. In business, you just have to think, and I'm sure you're all aware, it's usually a mutually beneficial relationship that they're looking for. And so it really can help you to boost what you bring to the table for those.
Yeah, I think the subcontracting part of it is kind of the unsung hero of how useful this is. I was a counselor in an area that included Bath Iron Works, and so while the Navy has these socioeconomic goals that they're trying to meet, they also expect that General Dynamics meets those goals with their subcontracting. And so there was a lot of opportunity for woman-owned small businesses and hub zone opportunities within subcontracting for a company like Bath Iron Works. And I just use them as an example. Every federal contract award over $750,000 has to have a subcontracting plan. And that's basically where that, in my example, General Dynamics is going to explain how they are going to meet those percentages within their subcontracting. And the government keeps track of, how well is that company doing on past contracts that they've had. So it can be a real beneficial if you're looking at the subcontracting route.
Subcontracting is also a great way to get your foot in the door to build and become a prime contractor. If that's something that you're interested in and you're struggling with making those connections, coming into the subcontractor and to help really build that past performance, that can be a great tool for you to use. So just keep that in mind moving forward.
Yeah. Yep. As to am I eligible? So there's really kind of three categories that you have to satisfy. The first one here is you have to be a small business, which I mean is right in the title of the certification. So that should be pretty straightforward. But again, that's based on your primary NAICS code, that industry classification code. You have to be 51% owned and controlled by women who are US citizens. So I've had, conversations with a husband and wife who own a business 50-50. That will not work. It has to be 51% owned and controlled by a woman. And then the last one here is that the woman owner must manage day-to-day operations and make long-term decisions. So if, this husband and wife were a landscaping company, and maybe it's been the husband's business, and suddenly he's like, hey, you know what, we can get this woman-owned small business certification if I just say you own 51% of the business, and we'll sign that over and we'll make the paperwork all line up. You actually have to show that you manage the day-to-day operations and make long-term decisions. And I hope I'm not jumping ahead to another slide here. Part of that is also like in a operating agreement. I have seen a lot of times in order to dissolve the company, there has to be a unanimous vote amongst the managers or directors. And the SBA will say if there needs to be a unanimous vote on anything, that's not 51% control. That means a woman does not have the ability to make that decision. So that's just a scenario and an example of what that statement means. And I see, Jasper, you're back, and this is right usually where questions start rolling in. So I'm happy to start fielding questions. I'm sure Miranda is too.
Got a couple full good
Sure.
ones in here. Stephanie Harris wondering if veteran spouses can use the SDOSB.
So there is within, I believe both the veteran-owned and service-disabled veteran-owned, there is a spouse portion of that provision that certification that allows that. I will tell you, I've not had one in person. Miranda, have you? No. Okay. So I
No,
would
I have
say
not.
we'd be happy to look that up and find the ins and outs of it. If you want to shoot either of us an email, we can definitely look into that. I have seen that, but I have not actually experienced it, so I hate to give any guidance on it.
And then on the citizenship point, Lana Cooney is wondering, is citizenship a requirement, or is the certification open to permanent residents?
I believe it is open to permanent residents. And there's always a gray area. There's, I believe permanent residents are okay. There are some other requirements like the asylum seekers and things that do not count, but I believe permanent residence is correct and will work. Is that how you understand it, Miranda?
And one more coming in, Rachel Batterby. Hope I didn't mess that one up. How can I understand if my type of business would have opportunity with federal contracts outside of the NAICS code?
So that's one of the kind of helpful things that an APEX counselor could help you do. We can help you kind of identify what opportunities are out there and also do a little bit of maybe market research to see what opportunities and what the federal government is buying. Say like over the last couple of years, like how many dollars and what contracts were awarded in this NAICS code in this field. We can kind of help with that market research.
Yeah, and we also offer a service called Bid Match. And I think we get into that a little bit later towards the end of the presentation, but it's essentially, I always liken it to online dating for government contracts because there's always a bunch of solicitations that come out and nobody knows where to find them. So what Bid Match does is we build you a profile based on your industry keywords and your NAICS codes. And then when a solicitation comes out that matches what it is that you do and matches your profile, you get a little notification and you can click on there and read those solicitations and see if you're interested.
Awesome. Well, if anyone has any other questions, feel free to put them in the chat, or and we will. Oh, one actually, as I'm saying it, one more from Kelly. Will you be covering the specific documentation needed to prove the 51% ownership and day-to-day ops and so on?
Yeah,
Yes,
we
we
get up to that.
will.
Yeah, I think in like two or three slides. Yep.
Awesome. And with that, why don't you guys continue?
All right. Look how pretty this slide is.
Okay, so usually on this slide, we kind of give you a little bit of this is the website where you go, the wosb.certified.sba.gov website. However, the SBA is making changes to that website, and so it is currently down and not accepting new applications. There has not been, we're told that this is not going to be an extended length of time that this is down. And I think that typically with the SBA, if they tell us, yeah, it'll be open next month, we usually give it about a month after that, and then we feel pretty confident that it will be up and running by then. Whenever the SBA makes technological changes like this to their website, we can get a little bit nervous about it because usually with the federal government doesn't have a great history of doing technology great. And they made changes to their website and the application process a couple of years back. And it proved to cause some delays in the application process, and our hopes are really high that these changes are really going to improve that. So while there is a little bit of a delay, the hope is that it's going to make the process that much smoother once it gets reopened. And we will 100% be letting people know if you sign up for our newsletter, we will let you know as soon as this is back reopened. As there isn't a firm date yet, we will keep you posted.
Yeah, I went at a conference last week where there were some SBA folks and they were talking through some of this, and they do have a date. It is September 7th, which is September 9th, which is a Monday. This My SBA certifications will be the new site. I don't even have the website address at the moment. But that is the new site. And basically, that slide where we had all the different certifications that they use, the Hub Zone, Woman Owned, Veteran Owned, 8A, all of them have their own system. Like, so if you were a veteran and a woman and you tried to do these certifications, you would have to do a login, a password, and a, two-factor authentication for one site, upload all these documents, and then you'd have to go over and do the same thing in the other one as well. So it was pretty cumbersome. And there was also a lot of differences. The veteran-owned certifications were taking like 3 to 4 weeks to get processed and approval on. And woman-owned was taking anywhere from 9 months to a year. And in the conversations at the conference, there was some speculation that they're going to be not just bringing the programs together in the same database, but also the reviewers are going to be sharing the load a lot more of these certifications, and that it'll probably take some time, but eventually, all of the certifications will probably even out somewhere in the middle where it might take 3 or 4 months for all of the different certifications to get processed. But right now, if you went to the SBA site and saw the WOSB thing, you'll see that none of those links work anymore, or they work. They just say we're not accepting applications at this time.
Yep.
All right, so getting into some of the documents needed. So first thing here is you have to have an active registration within the system for award management. That's sam.gov. That is, if you're doing federal work, you have to be registered in that system. So you have to have an active registration in that. Part of that is, the next thing is you have to have that proof of U.S. citizenship, whether it be a birth certificate, naturalization papers, or a passport. You have to provide a resume, and that is where you basically show and give examples of how you manage the day-to-day and long-term decision making. If you have a joint venture, you have to have those agreements as well. And then you have to have the organizational agreement, operating agreement, if you will, that basically just lists out like how, you know, how the process works, how decisions are made. That's what the SBA is looking for. I think on the next slide, it goes into more. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Miranda.
Yeah, so depending on your business structure, the documentation that they ask for will differ. So this slide kind of does a nice job of outlining them. If you're a sole proprietor, they're going to tell you what you need there. If you're a partnership, if you're an LLC, if you're a corporation, some of these documents that you'll see under corporation, articles of incorporation. Well, here in Maine, they actually call it a certificate of formation. So, and that's essentially the same document. Certain states call it different things. If you are in a partnership, they are going to ask you for additional documentation, like your partnership agreement and any amendments that you have. Now, these documents needed are typically the jumping off point. This is the list of documents that they ask you for the first time that you upload your documents. Oftentimes they will look at it, especially if you have a complicated partnership agreement or something like that, or they may come to you later on and ask for just a little bit more clarification. But typically what we see is you have to upload your certificate of formation. Any stock certificates that you have need to be uploaded. Your stock ledger needs to be uploaded, your corporate bylaws and those amendments, operating agreements. If you do have a DBA or a trade name, sometimes I see this often in my area. I'm not sure if you do in yours, Brian, but I often see sole proprietors that they say they have a DBA, but they don't actually formally have a DBA. They use a different name, but it's not documented in writing. And so just be aware that if you're going to register with using that DBA, that you will need to have that documentation. And that's stuff that we can help you with. We often will sit there with clients and hold their hand through this entire process. We'll help you upload the documents. If we run into something and you say, well, I'm a DBA, but I don't really have it in writing, we'll help you through that process of obtaining that documentation. So if anything on here makes you nervous, just know that our counselors will walk you through this, and this is something that we do most often with our clients. So it's nothing out of the ordinary for us, but it does really help you with the speed of the process if you upload all of your documents correctly the first time. So Brian was talking about the WOSB taking 9 months to a year before. I know that their goal is to always get them turned around in 90 days. And typically they actually have guidelines where they're supposed to get you some sort of answer within 90 days. And sometimes what we'll see is if people upload the incorrect documentation the first time, or if they miss something the first time, you might hear from them in 90 days, but all you're hearing from them is you need to go in and upload this correct documentation. So in that 90 days, if you had been able to do it and upload everything they needed the first time, it will cut that time really in a fraction for you. So just being prepared and making sure you have kind of all your ducks in a row so that you can get this uploaded the first time properly is really key with the certification.
Yeah, absolutely. The incomplete applications is the biggest holdup for the whole process and why things end up taking so long. For the EDWOSB, like I said before, this it's kind of just a subset within the WOSB. If you go for the certification, you're automatically a WOSB. So if there's a WOSB set aside and you're an EDWOSB, you can go for it. You meet those qualifications. You basically it's within those specific 110 NAICS codes, and the owner has to claim economic disadvantage. And there's some actual numbers on this slide. Miranda, you can jump in. Sorry. Where are we?
Sure. So, in order to qualify for an EDWOSB, there's some very strict requirements that you have to meet. So, essentially, if you all EDWOSBs are WOSBs, but not vice versa. So, what makes them different is that an EDWOSB is not only owned and controlled by one or more women. They each have to have a personal net worth less than $750,000. Each woman owner has $350,000 or less than adjusted gross income. So this is where that financial part comes in. And each of the female owners will have 6 million or less in personal assets. I will tell you that in my time counseling clients with EDWOSB, I have had a handful that will kind of look at what they need to provide for the EDWOSB, and they go, this is way too personal. I don't want to upload this financial information. Because they do, they're going to ask you for proof of all of your personal financial information. Keep that in mind when you're looking at the EDWOSB. That's the biggest differentiator between ED and just the regular WOSB. So if you fall into these categories and you qualify for an EDWOSB, but you are not comfortable uploading that financial information for whatever reason that you have, you can still apply for just the straightforward WOSB. So that's not a problem. And I've had many clients that said, no, I'm not getting into all of my financial stuff. We'll just stick with the WOSB. However, that because of that, there are far less EDWOSBs businesses that have been certified. And so it really does give you a leg up if you're willing to kind of jump through their hoops. But this right here kind of gives you a little bit of a snapshot of what they're looking for in terms of your personal assets and income. And of course, you have to operate under certain NAICS codes to be eligible. So keep that in mind as well. And like Bryan had said in the beginning, that's the place you want to start with first. When you have in your mind, okay, I want to go with the EDWOSB, make sure that your NAICS code is even eligible for that one. The last thing you want to do is upload all of the documentation only to find out that you don't fall under it.
Yeah, I had some clients who, were after going through the things or the requirements here for EDWOSB were like, yeah, absolutely, I qualify, I want to go for it. But that first, step of looking through the NAICS code was like, well, this particular NAICS code only qualifies under WOSB, so there's no point in taking on all of this extra work because it's not going to really assist you, help you in pursuing those.
That's right.
All right. So once you have actually submitted, what happens after that? You're able to log in and kind of check your status. Like Miranda was saying, they have 90 days usually to get back to you or at least give you some kind of status update. Usually they will follow that up. There'll be like an email as well, but I always encourage people, hey, like every week, put a reminder in for whatever, Monday morning, just to log in to check to see if there's any status updates. Again, that was with the older system. I'm assuming the new system is probably going to operate in the same way. The third bullet point here is you might be asked to withdraw and then reapply rather than to deny. Just because the SBA does have a waiting period if you are denied any certification, if they rule like, no, you do not qualify and straight out deny you. I think it's 180 days that you have to wait before you can reapply. And so if there's something that, they discover that you're not able to qualify for, and it's just, you need to change something in your operating agreement, they'll tell you, hey, why don't you just withdraw this application, get with your lawyer, or the next time you have a, board meeting, amend the operating agreement, and then you can reapply with the corrected and updated documents, and that'll be faster than us denying you, having you wait 180 days and then come back. And obviously if you're approved, they'll notify you.
So how Apex can help with the WOSB certifications. So first and foremost, things like this. So we often do webinars to kind of just educate people on what they are, but we will work with you one-on-one to understand the rules and process as it applies to your business specifically. We can help you with the data collection of it. So before with my clients, I often have a couple of meetings before we even start the application process, because we go over the documentation, we take a look at what documents they have, make sure that addresses are up to date on those documents, and that, legal business names are there, DBAs are in order. We walk you through that process. We can help you with the actual online application. So whether we meet in person or we can do it through Zoom, we can help you screen by screen, uploading the documents that you need and understanding where to go. And once you are approved, we can help you finding contract opportunities that are out there. So whether it be through our bid match program, like we talked about before, whether it be through just our own market research, we can certainly help you with that. I did see a question come through on the chat asking where you can find your industry specific opportunities. And that is actually a very complex question because it's in a bunch of different places. So sam.gov, while you need to be registered in there, that's also where you can look for solicitations for your industry on there. If you're looking for state solicitations, you'll want to go to the actual state procurement website and look there. Which is why BidMatch is actually such a great service, because it kind of takes that searching piece out of it, because it pulls from multiple databases for you and will show you ones that only apply to what it is that your industry does. So if you really are serious about looking for those types of solicitations, I really strongly suggest, at least in the beginning, reach out to us. Let us set you up with a BidMatch profile, because it's going to take a big headache out of the process for you. And once you do find a contract or a solicitation that you're interested in, we can help you with that bidding process. So we can help you to put together a great capability statement that's going to help you stand out from your competition when you bid. We can help you with understanding the FAR clauses that are listed in that solicitation, and we can certainly help you to put your proposal together and submit it. So we can really hold your hand through registering in sam.gov on the very first day that you decide that you want to embark on this process, to you submitting your proposal, and even post-award. We can walk you through that. So anything in between as well.
And there's just a lot of, part of our experience in being able to share what we do is just because we live it week to week, day to day, and we share it with each other as a team. So like with the SAM registration, I would tell clients, like, I do 3 SAM registrations a week maybe. And so, I kind of recognize things, or we talk and we've recognized, like, hey, there's something new there, or there's a different question, or things have changed. And same for, all of the certifications. I think it's with the Hub Zone application, there's a really weird spot where you have to have the email match up to what your government contact, like point of contact, is within your SAM registration. And we only found that out through trial and error. Like, nowhere in the Hub Zone application guide does it mention, something that needs to align with your SAM registration or anything like that. So just a lot of just experience that we're able to kind of pull on and help people through these processes is something that, is really insightful that we can share with folks. Lastly here, we've got our headshots, our beauty shots here of the whole team. I mentioned earlier how, like, California has, like 6 different regional programs, and here in the state of Maine, we have just one program from Eastern Maine Development Corporation. But the 9 of us all don't just go to EMDC in Bangor and work out of cubicles there. We're on the ground in these different regions, and they're kind of color coded to the small little crescent next to the picture. So Like Morgan's, who's in the center there with the green, he handles York and Cumberland County. Whereas like Jessica with the orange, she's out in Washington County. So we have all these different areas covered with a counselor, and then there are some statewide folks, obviously our program assistant, myself, and then Preston Thomas works actually with Four Directions, and he works with native and tribal owned business statewide, wherever they're located. So he can, all of the contact infos here, I'll make sure we get these out to folks so you're able to kind of see those and follow up if you want directly with the council in your region. And lastly, just to kind of self-plug or kind of paint a picture of the types of webinars and things we do have some, all of our all of our webinars are free. So things like understanding the foreign ownership, control, and influence, and then selling to municipalities and counties is another example of something we do. And again, these are free. They're all about an hour or so. We leave plenty of time for questions and answers and that sort of thing. So hopefully that's helpful for you folks to kind of see. We have a whole website here, mainapex.com/events, where all of our upcoming events are, but we just figured we'd highlight those too.
So yeah, we appreciate you guys, and I'm sure your webinar will continue to be helpful for other people. If we got some time, we've got a number of questions in the chat.
Yeah, great.
If you guys have anything else, when we get going on them. We have a few people, Jennifer and Paige, wondering if the certification is beneficial for agricultural businesses. Namely, Jennifer is a small scale sheep farmer and Paige is a produce farm.
My experience is I am blown away by what the government buys. They buy everything, and everything in large numbers to small, small quantities. And I would say if you're questioning if the government, in particular the federal government, buys what you sell, I would say reach out to one of the Apex counselors and see if we can help you do a little bit of market research. There was a little farm, unassuming farm that I worked with as a client pretty early on, who basically sells rabbit blood to the Air Force. I had no idea that was a thing. I like not in a million. Like I would have said no, but he had contracts because they used something about the plasma for testing and pathogens and stuff. Above my head, science is out of my wheelhouse, but it was incredibly interesting. So I would say we can take a look.
That if that farm is located in Maine, a friend of mine might actually work for them. She does the same. She works in that field specifically. So
it was so cool.
yeah. All right. As far as the economically disadvantaged certification, do they look at just the woman's income, or they have to take the husband/spouse's income as well?
Yeah, they do look at spouse income as well, and that's kind of what Miranda was saying, like trying to decide, like, are you comfortable sharing all of this information? It is kind of a tough spot. If you're filing taxes and things together, it might be a little bit easier, but if they're completely separate, they will ask for your spouse. They basically become a gosh, the word escapes me. Miranda, help me out. What is it called? They can go in and upload their own documents.
Yeah, they become almost like a co-applicant.
Yeah.
I know we touched on Jessica's question on industry-specific contracts. Is there any other aspects to that you guys would like to touch on?
No, it depends on what type of contract you're looking for. If you're looking to be a prime contractor in the federal space, SAM.gov tends to be where most contracts over $25,000 appear. You will find that micro purchasing, anything 10,000 or under, actually isn't publicized. That is something we actually do a whole webinar on micro purchases and how they are awarded. And state, if you say you're a business owner and you're here in the state of Maine, but you want to do work in Virginia, Virginia will have their own state procurement website where they list their contracts on there. Here in the state of Maine, they have their own. You could find it right there on the maine.gov website. You can find procurement opportunities there. But again, I really can't stress enough how helpful bid match is, because I'll tell you, we work in sam.gov all the time. And so we're very used to searching in there for solicitations. And sometimes we can even struggle as counselors because it's not always that user friendly. Bid match will find things that manually I wasn't able to find on my own. And you know, like Bryan had said on one of the slides, all the services that we do are free. So sometimes when we talk to clients, they think that, okay, well, now when they say do this, there's going to be a charge for this. There's never a charge. Bid match is a free service. So reach out to one of your counselors if you really are interested. We'll be happy to set that up for you.
Yeah, that touches on another question we've got. Stephanie, who lives in York County in Maine, but wants to do business in Washington County. Are there different rules and guidelines to follow there?
No, and really when it comes to federal, if you're thinking about anything in the federal space, that's all of the rules that you need to find there are in the FAR, the Federal Acquisition Regulation. I highly do not recommend that you look at the FAR by yourself because it is long and it is complicated and it is dry. But that is national. I know one of the other questions also was, is WOSB state by state? Or is it national? It's national. It's a federal program. So it's the same in every state, the WOSB. The DBE is different by state. So a lot of women-owned small businesses go after the DBE certification through the DOT. But no, WOSB is through the SBA, which is a federal. But if you would like to do business anywhere in the state of Maine and it's a federal contract, the same rules apply. If it's a state contract, the same rules apply. The only thing is when you get into cities and towns, local municipalities, sometimes they will have specific guidelines that they ask their contractors to follow, but that will all be listed out pretty specifically in the bid notice.
Yeah, go ahead, Stephanie.
So should I reach out to a counselor here in York or in the Washington County area?
So you want to reach out to the counselor in your area. So if you're in York, then you want to reach out to Morgan Rochlow.
Okay.
And he can help you with anything, even if you wanted to do business out of state, he can help you with that. But that's typically how the jurisdictions go. You reach out to the person who's located where you are.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and to piggyback on that, the SBA's woman-owned small business certification is national and it's for federal contracting. Here in the state of Maine, for state contracting, there is no woman-owned small business goal that the state of Maine has. But that's different, like Miranda was saying, state to state. And I know out in San Diego, like the city of San Diego, not just California, but the city of San Diego has their own woman-owned small business goal that they try to do with their city contracting. And so it can be applied in different ways. Here in Maine, there is no preference for anything, for veteran, for woman, for minority, and anything.
All right. Well, we had a great one from Wendy as well. Maybe it's something a counselor could help with, but is there any way to calculate the net worth as they calculate it before applying for the service? She says, no sense in getting everything together for the EDWOSB if your net worth is too high.
Yeah, absolutely. And Wendy, I've been scurrying behind the screens trying to look up the answer to that because I know where that answer was, but I'm not able to find it at the moment. But I do know that between the net worth and the what was the other requirement? I'm backing up here to see if I can find that. The net worth and the personal assets. Within personal assets, any property, including like second homes, camps, land, retirement, a lot of those things get rolled into that as well. I can try to if you want to send me an email, I will find, I know there's a guide that I probably have downloaded that has it. I was looking on the website to see if I could copy and paste it real fast, but I don't see it. But yeah, absolutely, and completely agree that if you look through the, what do I have to add up to get to that number? If looking at it, you're like, no, it's not worth it, then yeah, let's not go for it.
Great, and I will include your contact infos in my
Good.
follow-up, as well as the slides for this if they want to reach out to any of the specific counselors that were included on that slide.
Yeah, so Wendy, please email me. I'll follow up through with you.
All right. One from Leslie. Leslie runs a small porta potty business, and it looks like Stephanie here has supplied a couple good codes, but what would a good keyword search be for porta potty business?
Miranda, any ideas?
So the first thing that you'll want to do, I'm just doing a quick search right here. The first thing you'll want to do is determine what NAICS codes exist for porta potty industries anyway. And then once you find those, then you can kind of cross-check that. So there, yes, Brian just included the link in the chat there, the census.gov website.
I'll
That
include
is
that
going to
in
be
my
your
email
best
as
friend.
well.
So what you're going to do is, yes, you click on there, you type in what it is that you do, and it's going to give you a list of suggested NAICS codes. On each NAICS code too, when you click on it, it's going to give you a list of everything that's included. Most NAICS codes are not just for one very, very specific industry. They encapsulate a bunch of them. So I would just put in exactly what it is that you do, and see what comes up. I can see right here 562991. That's listed under pumping, and it specifically says under their renting and or servicing portable toilets. So you're probably going to find a couple that fit under what it is that you do.
Awesome. Looks like Stephanie's been helping out with that one. Janitorial services, solid waste collection, hazardous waste, and other. So yeah, there's a number of things it looks like it could apply under. And on that topic, Stephanie is also asking if you have any insight on how the categories are decided between WOSB and EDWOSB. For example, childcare businesses are EDWOSB, but a woman-owned battery manufacturing business is only WOSB.
So that is the SBA pulls together just all sorts of industry information on number of businesses, size of businesses, income of businesses. And they're the ones who basically determine what that size threshold is. Within construction, for instance, they base most of the construction ones on a dollar amount, like an annual receipts or annual income number, because it's possible that a construction firm with a small number of employees is doing millions of dollars of work, and so they've determined that that's the best way to determine if you are small. And the SBA also goes through and looks at those industries to see what is the representation of woman and EDWOSB to see if they should qualify or how they should qualify. Those calculations and those formulas are well beyond me, and I'm not sure everything that's taken into account, but I do know that they do revise them every few years. The NAICS codes they do every 5 years, but I believe for WOSB they go through that and look for representation on a more frequent basis than every 5 years, because they change the numbers pretty frequently.
And then on that, Wendy, following up on the NAICS codes, looks like on the census.gov, it's just for searching codes, or can you search keywords on there?
You can use keywords. There's probably a dozen different sites where you can look up NAICS codes. I really like this site, and I should, since I'm here, how about this? I'll show everybody. I really like this site because when you find one, and I typed in that one that was provided earlier for the solid waste collection, they give you like a little paragraph here about what it is. And then down here, there's a whole list of, you can see all of these numbers are the 562-111. So if you do any of these, you don't have to do all of them, but if you do any of these, that's the number you should use. And part of the reason I really like this site, or the big reason I like this site, is because they also have this cross-reference section, which is kind of like a, hey, if you're looking at this NAICS code, you might also want to consider these NAICS codes. And there's like, little rabbit hole here that we're going to go down of, well, maybe we should look at this materials recovery facilities one. If I click on it, it'll take me to that and tell me more about what that really is. And maybe that does, maybe that is meaningful for my business, or maybe it's not, and I can just go back and start, kind of navigating around. But this, I like that part of the site because like it's completely possible that you have, anywhere from 3 to 5 different NAICS codes. When you register in SAM, I'm not sure if they cut you off at some point, but I've seen businesses that have like 20 or more, and I wouldn't recommend that. I would try to focus a little bit more than that. Don't try to be everything to everybody. But it's okay to have multiple.
Awesome.
Power.
Yeah, it looks like we were looking as well. We've got Christy, wondering if there's a subcategory for mead. It may fall under wineries, as it looks like you found, but you guys may have a better answer for that one.
I had worked with a client who did mead, and if I remember right, there isn't anything that specifically mentions that. But I'm sure we could dig in and find where that would fall.
All right. Last but not least, certainly a more personal question about Maine APEX. Does APEX only support marketing side, or do you guys also help with loans and grants part?
So we do the contracting side. There are a lot of steps in terms of what you need to do to get registered to sell to the government, and what you need to be able to accept grants from the government are very, very similar. And so we do assist with that. I'll tell you that, most folks that I help through that road, once you go to grants.gov, you probably have more experience there than I do. Because we don't spend a lot of time there, but we can help you get registered so that you can apply for a grant or a loan.
Yeah, I mean, on that note, us at SCORE, that's something that we could possibly help you guys with: funding, loans, grants. We have mentors that are all free, and open to help you out on that topic. If I know we've run a little over our time here, but if anyone has any other questions, I will be sending out, after we wrap up here today, an email containing the contact info for Bryan, Miranda, and many of the other APEX counselors. I want to thank everyone for attending today. Thank you, Bryan. Thank you, Miranda. Always a really in-depth, informative topic to have you guys come speak on. And well, like I said before, today's meeting was recorded, so a recording will be sent out to everyone. You can also find that on our YouTube, as well as many other recorded webinars, SCORE Maine on YouTube. I'm also sending out a short survey. It would help us greatly if you could fill it out. And as I said before, us at SCORE, we're here for any stage of your business cycle. And if you don't already have a SCORE mentor, I'd encourage you to apply for one at score.org. It's a short form on our website, and we're here for you. Thanks again to the EMDC, Maine APEX, and the Maine Technology Institute for making today's workshop possible. Thanks again, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks. Have a great day, everyone.